Start recording.
Nice.
See how
Okay.
easy this is? I love this fucking thing.
Are we doing a pause?
Oh, sorry.
No pause. Jump
No
into
pause.
it, man.
No pause.
No pause. That's the howling at the beginning. It's already done.
Oh, gosh. Okay. Welcome, everybody, to another episode of Midnight Movie Distilleries.
And look into the camera, not down there.
I'm looking at the camera, finishing
Not
the
him,
bottle.
he's not.
I can't. I don't know episode number,
Okay.
but we'll put it in the
Whatever.
description. This is where we kind of just go over what we had discussed. What the previous movie was.
The Evil Dead.
There we go.
The
Or whatever you want.
Evil
Your
Dead.
Grecian version that you were
No,
talking
let's
about.
stick with the Evil Dead.
Yeah,
Those
we're
are the
just-
stupidest
Yeah,
names.
there we go. Let him pick that out. So I hated.
Oh my god, I can't say that word.
Oh,
Diabolical.
there you go.
That's the name that it was
You were
released.
saying
Ghost Play.
Yavaki.
What
How
was-
does that come to diabolical?
Diabolical. That's the name it was released in
Yeah, but you were saying
Uruguay.
like Yavaki. What
Yeah.
the fuck was that?
My brain just.
It's the red saw that
Oh
caused
my
that.
god.
No, so we're supposed to be finishing the bottle. I do not want to touch this stuff anymore.
Oh,
so,
come on, you big puss.
So I'm even gonna just compare it to the current lowest
you actually,
rating one.
You actually rated Zachariah Harris
I think
ahead of this one.
I think 1.5, right?
Yeah.
I believe so. So I'm gonna
that's-
kind of
that's-
compare.
That's unfathomable.
I think that's criminal.
That's criminal.
What?
That's
Oh
not.
my God.
That's not right. This is not good, but this is not that bad.
No, I'm gonna go on my off on my own here. So you guys.
You are not actually drinking Zachariah, are
I'm
you?
gonna try it. I'm gonna see now that
Oh
I've
my
had the red saw.
God.
I'm going to.
Okay, we mentioned this before. We got to do an episode of revisiting all the other bourbons
Oh,
that we've
that's
still
right,
Oh,
got.
yes, yeah,
Like-
we'll do that. We'll do that at some point.
We've got to do that because I want to see how they
that'll be a
rate
year-end
later
thing.
on. Well, sure, maybe, but that's a great thing to do. I think.
I think that's
we
great.
need to do that.
Would you like to see that? Oh my god. I
Like,
keep looking
comment,
at
Don't
this
look
outside.
down. Look at
Camera
the
up there.
camera.
Wait,
Sorry.
I moved Zachary out of the way.
There's
there
no
he is.
people down there. The camera's-
Zachariah.
I said Zachy.
Zachy.
Yeah, that's my new
Wacky
nickname for
Zachy.
it.
And we got the bullet bourbon.
Yeah, Bullet. This might be what I do to rinse that out. We'll see.
See, I'm getting used to this. I'm getting accustomed to it.
See,
It's
now
still not
that's-
great,
No, this is.
but
Zachariah
it's
is
not that bad.
It's not a rye, right? There's
No,
rye
Zacharias is.
whatsoever.
I don't know what it
It
is,
doesn't
but
have
it's
anything
certainly
in it.
not. Yeah, it's certainly not a,
It just
a
has
bourbon.
alcohol.
It's a corn mash.
I'm
maybe.
already liking the smell more than.
Come
I like
on,
red sauce.
it's-
Yes,
it's the rye.
Red sauce
You don't
smells
like the rye.
Open ass on a holiday.
This stuff
Like,
is-
it does
Red,
not-
red sauce.
What I say? Red sauce.
Red sauce.
Yeah, that's the Italian. I don't have any Italian in me.
So for those of
This
you,
was
who,
focaccia.
Would you
Somebody
like
gave us
some?
focaccia, by the way, and it was excellent.
we
I've
just
eaten
had
seven
came
of
off of the live show and somebody brought a bunch of food for the live show, and one of the things was focaccia, which is phenomenal focaccia. And thank you
wow.
for bringing it. I
Yes.
don't know who brought it. Who brought it? Do you know?
Well,
who brought
thank
it?
you,
It's
whoever
the
it was.
couple that are over there, which it's one of these weird things where I'm so embarrassed that they know my name, but I can't remember.
You
their
If it was
are
the
a
ones
horrible
right here
person.
in the front,
Yes.
I know the woman is part-time rocket scientist.
Part time.
That's her Instagram.
Oh,
I know
okay.
that much.
I'm like,
Oh,
because that seems like a really weird name.
I don't. Yes, that's her.
I didn't know where
And
you were
would
going
that-
with that.
Would that be Mr. Part-Time Rocket Scientist?
Yes, yes. And they have a corgi.
They
right?
do
That-
have
their
corgis. And the
corgi looks
corgis
so
come in the
cute.
store. That store would be
They're-
Ghoulish Models,
Ugh.
228 West Main Street.
No shameless plug whatsoever.
So we just came off the live show. We did the Red Saw bourbon, which, as we talked about in the last show, is a defunct, no longer in existence distillery.
Exactly the reason why.
We were hoping it was because they just maybe couldn't keep up or something, but it probably ended up that their bourbon was
couldn't
not
keep
good.
keep up with how successful they were, so they closed down.
No.
Point.
They were just
point
straight
counterpoint.
up bad.
Jane, you ignorant slut.
Yeah,
This is exactly the point I think that is. It's not as bad as Logan makes it to be,
No,
but it's certainly
isn't.
not good.
Do you actually know anything about the company? I mean, like how long has
Yes,
it been around?
they started in 2016.
Oh, so they weren't even
Oh,
around
wow.
that long.
Yeah.
Then how did
And-
they age it 3 years?
Exactly. And the thing is, bourbon has to be aged 5 years to be a bourbon. They were able to label it as a bourbon, or maybe they illegally labeled it as a
Yeah, there you
bourbon,
go.
and
That's
that's
why
part of their issues.
yeah, maybe
taken down.
maybe that's why maybe they got taken down.
Did
Because
But
they get sawed?
I
in
did
half?
see other I did see other reviews that
Thank
were
you.
talking about it, that it was a 3-year bourbon.
It
You can't
tasted
have
like
a 3-year bourbon.
something.
It may have been blended with 3 years. I don't see. So if you take a 2-year bourbon or 2-year whiskey and a 5-year bourbon and mix them, can you still call it a bourbon?
is that 7 years something?
No, that's the point.
So is this
that's
we're
my
getting
point.
into fractions
It's
here.
not.
You're gonna lose me in a minute.
It's not. So
How high is that tree over there?
Yeah. Nope.
So it's a defunct, and my hope was that it was one of those things that is defunct. So now, if you find a bottle of it and you get it, you keep it.
It's going to be worth a fortune.
What we didn't talk about on the last one was
how much was
it cost.
Okay,
Ooh.
let me guess. $28.
I'm going to guess 36.
Bob, it's $28.
It's not Price is Right rules, though.
Okay.
Logan got it right. $36.
Exactly?
Yeah.
Holy shit.
Well, I mean,
Wow.
36 something, so it was actually probably $37.
You-
but
you-
yes.
With tax and
You
everything.
get to go
Right,
to
right.
the family showcase.
So 36?
Come on
36
down.
bucks. For 36 bucks, I would not ever buy that again.
Thank you. See?
But I'm not hating it. The problem is the rye. So we talked about this in the last episode. It's 51% corn because it has to be 51% corn minimum to be a bourbon. They met the minimum
So,
requirements.
that's what I feel like that while drinking that's what they did for everything was they met the minimum requirements
Agreed.
for everything.
I think that's possible. And it was made in New York State,
See? It's
Not
just like
city.
the picante sauce.
which,
New York City.
New York
oh,
City.
I'm like, where the fuck
This
is
stuff's
that?
made in New York City.
But
For the younger generation, no, I'm kidding.
There
I
used to
won't
be a
do
thing
that.
called TVs.
TVs.
And
there was
ads.
commercials. Yeah. Now you call them ads. Short for advertisements.
so
Or if
we're
you're
moving on from the
British,
bourbon
it's-
because
No,
it
no.
wasn't that good.
But I do actually have a question. So why? I think we talked about it in the last one of why rye was the chosen food.
The chosen
We did talk about that
But,
somewhat.
But so why would you? Is rye cheaper? Like, no.
No.
Why would you take?
It grows
50
better in that climate.
Oh, okay.
It's cheaper to grow rye in the northern, technically eastern, northeast coast. That's when they first moved to Pennsylvania. So they started off as the Pennsylvania tries to claim whiskey started there. I say tries to claim because nobody knows really how whiskey and bourbon started. But they try to claim that that's where it started when the colonists first came over. And at that time, rye was what grew best in that region, Pennsylvania, which is right there with New York State. So everything was rye. When they moved the production down to Tennessee and Kentucky primarily, it was corn. Corn was what grew best on there, and corn had a little more sweetness to the whole thing. That's where bourbon was developed, and that's why they say bourbon has to be 51% corn. It has to be at least mostly corn.
And so if you're a distiller, that's not really was like the guy who's coming up with the flavors.
Master distiller.
Thank you, master.
It is
master
master.
distiller.
Very good. Good job. Logan.
He's been
Good
listening.
I'm
job.
out. That's all I got.
So
That was the most you've said all night.
So you're using rye just simply as a flavor.
As a filler, almost.
But
There's
a filler, as you said, a filler because it's cheaper, or a filler because you're trying to create a more interesting flavor to your bourbon.
Probably
Well-
yes on both, right?
Yeah, it's going to be a little bit of both, or at least they're going to claim that it's more for flavor too, right? So this is going to appeal more to that region who's used to rye whiskeys, right?
Okay.
Because that other rye whiskey that we had was 100% rye from Pennsylvania, but it was properly made and properly aged. It was delicious. This, I think, is a little young, a little hot, and not like you'd want it to be young and hot. I'm saying for a bourbon, that's
Yeah,
not
not in the good.
not what you
Usually,
like.
yeah.
But that was its downfall. Is it tried to be a bourbon when it was really wanting to be a rye?
Yeah, I mean, it definitely has the spiciness of the rye.
And it's spicy because it's not aged well. It's not.
But it really is an enigma wrapped up in a whatever the
Conundrum?
other- Conundrum. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Because
I read
it's-
that. I saw that movie too.
Because
But-
the smell
The smell is what immediately turned me off.
already see it doesn't turn me off. I mean, I think it's because I smell the sweetness of the corn.
Yeah,
But I
and
agree
and
with-
I love sweet stuff. That's why I thought I would like that. And
Yeah.
I can smell the sweet, but there's something in there that just hit my nose and.
I agree. There's a bit of a funk in the smell.
Thank you.
I do agree. There's
Is
a
it
bit of a
Irish?
funk. No, not that kind of funk.
Okay.
Not funked up. But there is a bit of a funk in the smell. And I think
Yes.
that's because the problem is they did 51% corn, and I think it was 37% rye.
Now, would this be something you could blend into another whiskey?
Yes.
But not,
I would
not at this point.
I would encourage it. Oh, well, I don't know. I think it's worth blending to make it better.
Really?
But the problem is, don't blend it with necessarily a better one. Just blend it with something that's maybe a higher corn mash, so that you
So
can
that it
level
tones
out
down
that
that rye.
rye.
Bring it close.
Right,
To the,
so it's not so
Right,
just
right,
an
right,
age.
right, right.
And I would blend it with something that's aged more than 3 years. I would blend it with something that's definitely older than this.
Maybe that's what we should do in that same episode is try and blend our own.
Oh,
I'm up for
can we
that.
be
With the
our own
remnants
distillers?
of
Well, of
some
course
that?
we wouldn't be our own distillers. We'd be our own alchemists
we could be
maybe,
our
but
own
we wouldn't be our own
MD.
blenders.
Would we be
Can I-
Midnight
can I
Movie
turn,
Distillery
like, copper
Distillery
into
then?
gold?
Both of you are fucked in the head now if you're going to go that
For the
direction.
fun.
So
Because you are a fun guy.
Oh God.
No.
no,
No.
he's not fun or a guy.
No. Hey.
So anyway,
I'm right here.
we're going to move on for this. We bought it. We got it because Red saw we just watched Evil Dead,
The Evil Dead.
which is the correct. That's very
Ghost
correct. They didn't
play.
use the in any of the sequels. Red saw, chainsaw. We thought it would work.
It did not.
I was really excited about it, but then after I bought it is when I realized that they were actually a defunct distillery, and now I know why. That's all.
Yes.
Moving
Now,
on.
as you see the book standing next to the Red Saw here, we tried to give this away at the show, the live show, by asking some trivia, and apparently we're just too good at trivia, and we stumped everybody. So
did.
this guy is a very, very nice book.
This
I'm
book,
I'm going to have
it's
Vanna
a
White
little
over here
collector
show it
item.
off.
That's got all the pages
The
that were
actual
in
pages.
the movie. So if you see these, wait a minute,
Not written in blood, and it's not made of human skin
That we're aware of.
that we're aware
See,
of.
there's the eyeball. That was
We
actually
can neither
in the
confirm
movie.
nor deny it.
That page, those pages were actually in the movie with the eyeball and stuff.
Yeah.
And we do have, I mean, this was the same pages that they used in the Necronomicon that was in part 1, 2, and Army of Darkness. The cover, that style of face, was really from Evil
That is-
Dead 2.
and I don't know if you can do a profile so that they could see it actually does bulge out.
I don't know if you could
Does-
see it.
yeah.
It is embossed, so it is raised and sunken in the mouth and sunken in the eyes and bridge nose and everything. So it actually is 3D.
It's as close to the real thing as we can get.
without
No.
getting in trouble.
It's a great collectible. I have one, and we were giving away actually a second one that I had bought for this show, but we weren't going to just give it away. You have
You
to
gotta earn that one.
You have to earn it, man. This is a high end collectible to me.
I thought you were going to say this is a
me.
high-end podcast.
No, I'm not that stupid.
That made you laugh. That's not good.
Yeah, it's very good. So, I've got a big question for you guys. then.
Okay.
So, what I want to talk about with our Finishing the Bottle episode is this is a trilogy, but it's not a trilogy, right? So, Evil Dead 1, we'll call it The Evil Dead, because really it's not Evil Dead 1.
Yep.
The Evil Dead. Evil Dead 2 was as we talked about in our live show, was a remake and a sequel.
So
A requel.
A requel. And that's been
Suave.
confirmed by Sam Raimi and, of course, Bruce Campbell, that this was a remaking for the
just get
first
that?
half. What did you say? I missed it.
You said requel, and I said suave.
That's hilarious.
Yeah.
I love you,
Don't
Logan.
play into it.
I'm
I
trying.
thought that
Yeah,
was
he's
great.
trying to
That's a
ignore me.
good one.
I'll just
That's a
move
good
into my
Enrico.
corner.
Enrico.
So basically, which was the best of the three? Sam Raimi was part of writing all of them. In fact, he wrote all of the first one. But then again, he had his brothers jumping in and some other people jumping in on 2 and Army of Darkness, which we'll call 3 just for the sake of argument. But what do we think of these movies? What's the deal with 1, 2, and Army of Darkness?
So I will freely admit that I've seen. I mentioned it in the last podcast that I've seen The Evil Dead now 25 plus times.
Minimum.
But I've seen Evil Dead 2 probably twice that.
Agreed.
Oh.
Agreed.
And we talked about it in the last episode. There are lots of before I became a little bit more knowledgeable, let's say, in quotes, about horror movies, there are many times where I would describe, oh my God, there's this great scene in The Evil Dead, where what I was actually describing was a scene
Evil
from
Dead
Evil
2.
Dead 2.
Yes.
You know, because it's...
Do you think it should have been called Evil Dead 2?
As opposed to just Evil Dead, because the other one was The Evil Dead?
I don't know. I'm asking because the simple fact is it was a
they've done
sequel,
that,
but it was
yeah.
also a remake. So why would you call a remake Evil Dead 2 if it's a remake?
I don't know.
Because I think it's just more of a continuation, right? They set you up nicely to understand the first one, and then they're like, oh yeah, by the way, we're going to put this in here. You know, this is what we really wanted to do. You know, I get where they were going with that. I do like Evil Dead 2 a little bit more than Evil Dead, just because of the fact. Well, I mean, obviously it's bigger budget for Evil Dead 2, but the Evil Dead 1 to me just has that spot in there where you know what they had to do to get the movie made, right? You know, they had to put in the effort. They had to,
Without question.
the small budget. You can see, but everybody kind of seemed to give it their all. Is how I felt.
Totally agree.
You know,
Totally
and
agree.
That's why I think that holds more of a soft spot for me than Evil Dead 2. I think Evil Dead 2 is more like I think you guys have mentioned it too. It's more this is what we wanted to make, you know, but we didn't have the budget. Now we do, and here we're gonna, you know, still please everybody. And
So that's true to a point. I will say that from what we know of these movies and the storyline that was there, they could not get the rights to their own movie, The Evil Dead, because they sold it.
Right.
So they sold the characters, but they weren't allowed to use extra footage. They weren't allowed to use the same storyline either. So they had to change it. Now, they wanted to change it anyway, because at that point, Sam Raimi's like, well, now we've been doing this way. Can you guys hear that traffic?
okay.
That's crazy.
Just letting you know.
But he wanted to... He knew where the fallouts were, and he knew what he wanted to improve on, so that's what he did. He also took the opportunity to improve on the story. Plus, he had to make it make sense for the sequel portion of it. Oops. So he had part one rewritten a little bit, so it made sense to flow into part two. So this was more or less the movie that he really wanted to make.
But I also think, I agree. I also think there's a little bit of, all of them were novice filmmakers.
Clearly.
And I think what you got in Evil Dead 2 was Raimi and the other, founding members that were writing, they knew what they wanted out of those characters. In other words, it's, as we said before, I mean, in other words, it's what everyone knows Ash Williams for today,
Right.
was really what came out of Evil Dead 2. And as we said in the previous episode, The Evil Dead was originally filmed more as a serious horror movie.
Sure. Right.
And that was
With levity.
That was,
I
but I think they'll say it's like the going in thought was this was a serious movie. I
Correct.
think what came out of it, and I haven't necessarily heard this in interviews, but I'm kind of guessing, is the budget constraints meant that some things did just turn out to be funnier than necessary.
Sure.
And people, when they started doing screenings, and they took it to a distributor, and the distributor thought it was like the funniest horror movie he'd seen.
Correct.
Yes. And they were like, okay. And so sometimes I think they just picked out the parts that were super successful, and when they had an opportunity to redo it in Evil Dead 2, they said, okay, well, let's just take away the more of the pure horror side of it and turn it into a little bit more like really pushing on that comedy.
What was the release date on 2?
The release date
or
on
release
2.
year, I should say. Was that 80?
It's say 87, I think it was.
Yeah.
87.
So it was quite a ways after.
Yeah. 10.
But we were probably in the Nightmare on Elm Street realm.
Yeah.
What was that? Probably 2-ish? Because what was 2 or 3-ish? So we're starting to get into that horror's more needs a comedy. You know what I mean? Maybe they kind of just, when the guy said, "Hey, this is the funniest thing," they're like, "Oh shit, yeah, go, yeah, that's exactly what we intended."
Yeah, that's what we were going for.
Yeah, that's exactly what we meant. Just to kind of go along with it and keep that flow going. Because I do feel like around that time frame, a lot of the horror movies became more comedic, and I don't know if that's because, that could be, they were probably starting to blame.
Listen,
violence on any and everything at that point, probably at that date and time, and so they were trying to say, well, no, look, it's funny, it's more comedic than.
Right.
I think that did feed into Evil Dead 2, the feedback they got from the Evil Dead.
Yep.
But let's face it, Evil Dead, any of the movies, for 1 or 2, especially 2, was an over-the-top horror movie.
Yeah.
Not just for the time, but still
No,
over
absolutely.
the top. This Evil Dead 2 is the one that got me into that particular niche of horror,
Sure.
which is why I love the Japanese horror. That is so over the top, it's ridiculous.
It hit a nerve with certain people.
they
I shouldn't
have
say
to
nerve,
top
because
it.
that's-
Like the Achilles.
yes.
Oh,
Just
that
like-
with the ankle
Yeah.
pencil in the
Yeah,
ankle.
that was great.
Yes.
But the point is, it's like that is the first over-the-top horror movie that I can think of that may be in history, that they went so beyond a typical horror movie, they broke and created a new genre.
Well-
Sorry.
No, go ahead.
One of the things we were already like so far over. One of the things that I wanted to talk about was, it's like there are so many horror tropes that were kind of created by this movie.
no doubt.
Like even
No doubt.
even things like the person you thought was dead, suddenly like raising up behind you.
Yes.
Like
Yeah.
just like the
Well-
creepy.
Well, they kind of did
And I-
that sort of thing in other horror movies
Well, so
before
I
that.
felt like they
But
did
with
have
that
some
speed, I mean,
homages,
it's
right?
like-
Well-
Because you had, if you think about a Carrie, the whole, I'm going to reach for this, and then all of a sudden the hand pops out of the dirt.
Sure.
I felt like, I don't know if that was intentional
Sure.
or if that was just more like, we're over here, let's do that. But one thing I think was quite nice was the kudos to Bruce Campbell for playing it serious in the first one, as serious as he could, but then also in the next one, giving that comedic side, possibly unintentionally, but then
Yeah.
he was able to then take that and run with it beyond that. So then you've got Army of Darkness, and things like that. I feel like he did a pretty good job of saying, okay, well, you know what, this is that niche that you mentioned, and now I'm running with it, and same
Yeah.
with Raimi. And I think that was a good job on their part to see what happened and say, okay, we're just going to take this and run with it.
So I think the biggest influence for Raimi and Bruce Campbell as well, and probably Rob Tipper too, is the fact that they were all big Three Stooges fans.
Sure.
We talked about this a little bit in the last show, but that was such a huge factor in this that when they did the first one, they weren't necessarily thinking Three Stooges and doing anything to that effect at all. But when people started reacting to the over-the-top, and when I say people, is other producers or people who, distributors who said, oh, the funniest horror movie ever.
Right.
They're like, well, let's give the people what they want. And what they knew,
Having that background in
Yeah.
Three Stooges just
that's what they knew. That was Three Stooges humor.
yeah.
So they threw all that Three Stooges humor in there, and they threw it in there. They went all in on that.
See, imagine if they loved like Mork and Mindy or something. I mean,
Well, technically, that was after this movie.
I
but,
understand.
But
I was gonna do that, but that's
No, yeah.
yeah.
But I get you. It could have been Karl Marx, the Marx Brothers. It could have been Marx
Yeah.
Brothers humor, right? It could have been a lot of different things
Charlie
that,
Chaplin.
but it was with, sure, Charlie Chaplin. But it was Three Stooges. The whole Shemp, the fake Shemps,
It's so funny.
was all in on that. They and really, like you said, the studios, everybody called them fake Shemps or Shemps, became a term for when
Right.
you use somebody to fake another actor and stuff. But really, they were the first ones to really ever give credit to that.
Absolutely.
And they knew it because they were Three Stooges fans. So I think this whole movie is basically horror meets the Three Stooges.
So Go on, because I think I cut
Nope.
you off.
No. I
Logan
already
doesn't
said
have
my-
anything to say
No,
this
I already
entire
said my-
night.
I said my piece.
He is like so quiet.
So the other thing this is
Speak softly and carry a big dick. Stick.
Whoa!
Oh, that's what it was. I'm sorry.
Whoa! I talked.
and
Never
that's
mind.
why you don't talk. But so the other thing I was again wanted to mention but forgot to was I'm sure you read the same trivia, but I thought it was funny how there's just a lot of blood
Oh, yes.
in the Evil
Yeah.
Dead,
Oh, yes.
and
Do you know how much blood?
Oh, I don't have an exact number now.
I do.
3,000 gallons.
300
Yeah.
gallons.
I remember reading something.
Now, this is to compare to the remake in 2013 that had, and there's a debate on that, whether it was between 50 and 70,000 gallons
Wow.
in that movie alone. Now, Evil Dead Rise went way beyond that
Oh God, yeah.
because they had the whole elevator scene. They may have broken the record for the most blood used in a movie, which previously was held by.
I should know this.
You should know this because they referenced it in the fucking Evil Dead Rise movie.
The Shining.
Shining,
Yeah.
because they did the elevator
Right,
blood
right,
scene,
right.
which
Yeah.
this was an homage to. So the point is, this had almost no blood compared to typical modern day horror movies.
But the other thing I think it's funny, and I think it's funny that our last live show we also mentioned the same kind of thing because of budget, because of them being out in the middle of nowhere.
Yep.
There's a story that Campbell talks about all the time, which is basically the costume, the outfit that he wore.
Oh yes. We
the-
didn't get to talk about that. That's,
the,
that's a good point.
basically
Good,
it's like
bring it up.
he had one outfit.
Yeah.
He had one outfit that he
The
was
blue
wearing
denim shirt.
through the entire thing. Well,
Which leads to continuity, right? I mean, that
Well, all right.
lends itself, I should say.
but so the point is, it's because of continuity, very much like Tucker and Dale, what we talked about a few weeks ago.
Great movie.
Great movie. Basically, a lot of the blood obviously kept on his, on his shirt, and he talks about the fact that because it was wet and everything, they would put it in front of the fire. And one time they put it in front of the fire to dry off, but there was so much of this fake blood on there that when they picked it up, it basically just
It
stayed,
snapped. Yeah.
and
It held the form.
and just broke.
Yeah.
And so they had to go and
So Bruce
another-
Campbell tells a story about being in that situation, and it because they had no running water up at this cabin. They brought in electricity. They had no running water, and then when I say they brought in electricity, it was a generator.
Sure.
They didn't have actual electricity up there.
a whole bunch of
really.
extension cords.
Right,
Yeah.
right. Running from the nearby town 7 miles away.
Sure.
But at one point, Bruce they had to clean him off. In fact, at a couple points, they drove into town for the showers, and literally, the pickup truck that was in the movie, was somebody that they knew in town that was helping them out and whatnot. He rode in the back of that pickup truck into town, covered in blood, to take a shower, and literally everybody in that little town was just watching this blood-covered guy coming out of the back of a pickup truck. He said it was one of those most awkward situations he's had,
Yeah.
but I understand it.
Yes.
So now, as we're talking about blood, I think we were trying to get to it in the previous episode, but
Yeah.
we didn't get to it. The projector.
Oh,
The
yes.
projector scene.
I've got a
Yep.
story. You got a
So
story.
I've got the story.
Let me hear it.
I'll
Let me
snag
hear it.
this one
Let me
from
hear
you. So the bloody
Look
projector
at Logan
scene.
talking in this
Yeah,
episode.
Yeah, I'm
Good
getting in
job.
there. The bloody
what she
projector
said.
scene, I guess, was a tribute
Yeah.
to the. Let's see, what was his name? Andy Granger.
Yes.
He was an early investor in the franchise, and he advised Sam Raimi and Bruce Campbell, and he said to them, "Fellas, no matter what you do, keep the blood running down the screen."
Yes.
And so that was kind of a little.
And that's
homage
why they
to him
added a
and
film
whatnot.
projector. Because let's
Yeah.
face it, that house would not have had a working film projector in the fucking
No.
cellar.
But the thing is I think it fit well into the film,
Because it was
the way
an
they
old
did
projector?
it. Well, but no, just the way that they did it, to show that, hey, now, and then obviously they went and moved into the light bulb filling with blood and stuff, which you could, honestly, for sound person, you could easily tell it was somebody just maybe pouring a beer or something.
Right.
Like
Agreed.
there's not that much going into that. But I did like that, they worked that into there, and then even to the point where, the film projector blows up, and,
Sure.
it was nice how they threw that in there, and it's that would be cool just to be able to say that Andy Granger was, hey, yeah, that's for me.
But the other
Absolutely.
thing I thought was funny though is I was surprised they didn't kind of it was on fire. It's like the other things didn't catch on fire in a dusty.
Sure.
Dusty nothing. It was like a wet, damp cellar too.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah.
Well, yeah,
that's
I guess.
It was all dank down there.
I don't know. I thought that they would have made a bigger deal about the fact that it caught on fire.
I think it should have caught on fire sooner. Because it was so dank down there.
But-
Shouldn't have been working. Should have been corroded.
The other thing I thought was funny, we talked about the fact they had electricity, and I guess maybe the cabin just had electricity, but you have this cabin literally in the middle of nowhere.
Yeah.
Why would they have electricity
Yeah.
anyway?
Yeah. Yeah. Originally, it was a hunting cabin, from what I understand. It was a hunter's cabin where they just went there and slept and then got out and hunted the next morning and stuff like that. So they didn't need anything in it. But it didn't have a
Nothing
fireplace
more than a
either.
tent, basically.
Yeah,
Right?
right. It was a wooden
Yeah.
tent.
Yeah.
Kept the
They
elements
shored it up and they
That's what
they
I
had
call,
to
that's what I call
support
my
it.
erections, but okay.
off. A tent?
Wooden tent.
Why would you call it a wooden tent?
I don't know, because it gets really hard.
But what's the tent?
It's like
part?
camping because it's in tents.
Because it has a kickstand.
Yes.
Yeah, you've never. Oh wait, he doesn't know. Back in the day, when a gentleman would get an erection, his pants would turn into. That's why there's the phrase called pitching
Pitching a tent.
So, you may not have heard that before. So.
I honestly don't think I've ever heard that.
Oh, he's not. Yes, I
You've
taught
never
you
heard
something.
pitching a tent?
Yes, yeah.
No.
So,
Oh my
because
God,
if you
you've
think
been
about
in
it,
the
you're laying
States
on
for
your
like
back.
35 fucking years. Oh
That
my
is
God.
It's never come up in polite
I
conversation.
taught something.
Oh, that's not an Illinois thing, is it?
No,
We didn't come up. No,
I'm
I've
sure
heard
that's
that.
all over.
Oh my
Just
God.
not over across the pond. But.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But he's been on this side of the pond for like
Right, but
35
it was
freaking
past
years.
the young.
I,
prepubescent
I,
ages when-
all right, okay. All right.
What else are we talking about?
Oh, we got stuff to talk about?
No.
Yeah.
I said, what else are we
So
Thanks
talking
for
I
coming,
am gonna talk
everybody.
I am going to talk a little bit more though. If you notice, I finished my Zachariah Harris.
Why?
What didn't I finish in the last episode?
Why did you finish Zachariah Harris?
Because it is. I'm glad I gave that still a 1.5, and I'm glad that I gave Red Saw a 1.
So you still think Zachariah Harris
I still
is better
think
than Red
Zachariah
Saw?
Harris
Wow.
is better than Red Saw. Yeah, I'm gonna leave it out there because I was very. Is this any better? Like in the sense that, oh my God, I want no, I don't want to take that home with me.
You
or
don't
anything
want
like
you don't
that,
like
but
either one of them.
I don't, but if
but
I
you
had
still-
to choose between the two, so.
I'd still. This has at least got flavor. That just tastes like
Yeah,
alcohol.
but when the flavor's ass, that's not
I-
a good thing.
All right,
Isn't
all
it?
right, all
Yeah,
right,
Well, it depends. Yeah,
all right, all right.
depends on your taste.
All right. I don't think it's as bad as Zachariah Harris. I don't think it's good
I don't know.
by any stretch of the
I
imagination.
feel like the staves from that were made from literal like pallet.
It was so technically being a bourbon has to be virgin oak barrels. So if they actually and if this didn't go under because they broke all the fucking rules and put bourbon on it when it had nothing to do with the bourbon,
Maybe
That's
got
what
fined.
happened, honestly.
it could have been fines that they. I don't know. I can't find that much history on
Think
it.
about it.
If you go to the website
that
that's
should
on there,
make that-
it's gone.
That should make that then, right? Like if they broke.
Well, that
maybe
would
they were
make it a
trying to be ahead.
collectible.
I'm trying to help them out here, but maybe they were trying to. Yeah, that maybe that could turn into something where it's like, oh, they were rule breakers. But
Maybe.
What
Maybe.
what you're not taking into account is the fact
Oh,
that
God.
this bourbon embodies hard-working spirit of American great hometowns. America's great hometowns.
They're just trying to make you
Yeah.
feel bad for not liking.
Try to name that hometown they're from.
We craft it here
In
in our hometown
of.
with grains
Oh Jesus! Just say the
grown
fucking
and
name of the town.
harvest, quite literally
Right next door.
by the farmers next door.
Yeah, that's true. They use the farms that surrounded the distillery. Actually, they built the
aged for at
distillery
least
in the middle of the
2
field.
years.
But see,
We
that's
distill it
that's
from 51%
that right there is a fallacy.
corn, 34% rye, and 15% malted barley.
That's a fallacy. If they say at least 3 years, bourbon has to
2
be
years.
5.
2 years. He says 2.
2 years.
Yeah, but it could still
Bourbon
be
has to
5. They just say at least 2.
But then why would you say that
but
if that
then-
means? Wouldn't
see,
you
maybe
say
a
at
lawyer
least
made this.
5?
Maybe it was a lawyer that made
Wouldn't you
this
say
shit.
at least 5? Because it has
would
to be
think so.
5.
It's a backyard to bottle,
right.
uniquely complex
More like a back door to bottle.
bourbon whiskey
Wow.
of the highest order.
You know what they should have done? They
Like,
should have made this, when you
enjoy.
take this off, it looks like a giant butthole. Because that's what it feels like you poured out of that.
You could still use it as that.
I
Yes. Hey now.
I would be okay with putting it in my Coke. Coca-Cola.
Cola.
I wouldn't. I honestly wouldn't even drink that with Coke.
Really?
I am very upset by that.
I think it's better than Zachariah Harris.
I agree. I
But,
think it's better than Zachariah Harris.
but Jesus. I mean, it's certainly not good, but it's not that bad.
Yes.
I'm sticking with my number, my 2
Sure.
point.
No,
Yep,
yeah,
2
that's
point.
your
What, I did
prerogative.
3. You did 2
You're
point.
wrong, but
I
that's
did
your
2
prerogative.
2.3.
No, I did.
No, I
2.3.
did 2. Yeah, I just did a straight 2.
Straight 2.
Yeah.
Actually, I did whole numbers for on both of these.
Oh,
Well, there you go.
2 and a 4.
yeah.
Good on you.
I know.
Good job, Warwick. You did whole numbers.
I did big numbers. I did big numbers.
And you learned something today too.
So, back to the original discussion. We've really varied from this. Back
Sorry.
to the original discussion of that. We all agree that Evil Dead, I think we all agree that Evil Dead 2 was a better movie than The Evil Dead.
So I am going to liken it in the same discussion I often say with Alien and Aliens.
Oh.
Interesting.
I'm jumping right on the bandwagon saying Aliens is better than Alien.
Well, and that's what I'm saying. So in other
Okay,
words, I
okay,
think.
okay.
Well, let me qualify.
Ooh.
Ooh, okay.
Alien is technically a better movie, but
Okay.
but Aliens is by far a way more watchable movie.
I think because it's more of an action movie, and the first one was more of a suspense.
Yes.
Right,
Yeah.
right. But so in other words, and I guess I can't quite liken The Evil Dead to Alien because I don't necessarily think it's a better movie, but I definitely where I was going with it.
Thank you.
In my adult brain is that I think that Evil Dead 2 is by far a way more enjoyable movie.
I agree. But think about why. They went more over the top based on the feedback. What we guess is because of the feedback on Evil
Right.
Dead 1 saying that was a hilarious movie. They're like, a hilarious horror movie. Oh, that's something.
What can
Let's
we, what
do
can
a
we
more
ramp up on that?
hilarious
Kind of
horror
had to go
movie.
way over the top then with Aliens too, right? Because now, meaning
I
not
think-
Aliens number 2, meaning Aliens.
I think Aliens had that catch because of the fact that they did
Oh.
more catchphrases. It had a better plot that everybody was hunting the aliens now. The first one was more like, they exist, we came across them, oh my God, they can't be killed, what do we do, get away. Right, a typical horror movie.
Could you
but
watch those
Aliens,
back to back
they
then?
went in to hunt them.
It's almost like, do you feel like you could watch Alien and Aliens back to back, sort of like how I like to watch
have.
Halloween and Halloween 2?
I have.
You know what I mean? Like the continuation of it.
Yeah.
Right,
Absolutely have.
I've done as well, and I actually I think it's a perfect pairing because of the fact that it's you leave Alien with just
And they leave it open. right?
you're on edge. I mean it's like
Yeah.
there was just a lot more suspense. I guess like Alien still has lots of suspense in it.
Of
it
course,
was-
still a horror movie.
I think it's you watch Alien and it's like it's intense. You watch Aliens and you just have a far more enjoyable cinematic experience.
because it had they both had like a memorable scenes to them, right? Of course, Alien had the chest burster, the original chest burster. They had the introduction of the alien creature itself, the
Which
the
you-
Sigourney
face
Weaver in her
huggers.
underwear.
Which,
Right.
and Jonesy the cat.
Right.
And of course the classic thing is you only see the xenomorph on screen for like 20 seconds in the
Correct.
entire movie.
Sure.
Correct. But the thing that made it more interesting, I think, in Aliens is that they went to hunt them. They didn't actually know they were hunting them at the beginning, and they
Right.
had to hunt them because it was more survival than hunting them. But now it became a battle. Now it became more of a like, well, we know aliens, or the viewers know aliens, what they are like, xenomorphs specifically, from the first movie. Now, what's this high-tech army going to be able to do against these guys? Now you've got some interest going on
So
there.
now, and then I guess you could tie that back into Evil Dead and Evil Dead 2, because now in Evil Dead 2, they already have all the information on what the demons are about, and then they try to maybe explain it a little more, take it a little deeper,
And
but
they did,
also
and
throw
they
in the
did.
comedic side of it, because unintentionally, right?
But clearly intentionally.
yeah,
I
so
think it was. Yeah.
it just, that to me means that they're trying to better themselves, which is what you want to do, right? And that's what I feel like a lot of the sequels and threequels, whatever you want to call them nowadays, are more just like, well, we've got this big story. The first one's a tease. The second one is like, okay, we're going to give you a little more information, and the third one's the one you really want to watch, right? And I think that with Evil Dead and Evil Dead 2, it was more like, hey, we didn't get it as good as we wanted the first time around, so here we're going to bring it back, give you the information, and then we're going to, up the ante a little bit.
I agree.
I do agree as well. I mean, I do think, I think there's a little bit, we've talked about it before. It's like, I think there's a little bit of the, hey, we're not making any money off of the first one.
Right.
Like,
Right. We got to kind of remake it a little
how
bit.
can we solve that problem? But then to your point, I mean, I think it's you have a director that's probably did have a lot of kind of thoughts of saying, well, okay, here's what I want to do, and then you talk to the producer and go, yeah, you don't have money for that.
Yeah.
So
Sure.
okay, well, so here's what we're going to do.
Sure.
And they just had that ability to just do a lot more with Evil Dead 2. But again, I still stick by it's. I could watch Evil Dead 2 over and over again. Again, I've watched this many times, but like,
It was still a better movie than The Evil Dead.
correct.
I agree.
Yeah.
I agree. I don't think that's a dispute. I don't think anybody would say that The Evil Dead is a better movie than Evil Dead 2.
Unless they're a diehard purist, maybe.
No,
right?
no, even the diehard purists though, but they're purists because of Ash. They're purists because of the Deadites. In fact, let's face it, all the fans, there's a big fandom call themselves the Deadites,
Right.
right? And it's based on, majority of things are based on Ash being the asshole that
Right.
he is. And that didn't come along until Evil Dead 2.
Correct.
But I think the other thing is, we haven't talked about Army of Darkness.
We should probably get to that.
So I think, like, I don't like Army. I think Army of
You
Darkness.
don't like Army of
No,
Darkness?
no.
Don't filter
You
yourself.
dick.
Let it out, man.
No, it's not.
The fuck's the matter
It's not
with
that I
you?
don't like it, because I stopped myself before I
Okay.
said my full sentence.
All right.
I was going to say I don't like it as much as I like Evil Dead 2.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
But because
okay.
I think what they did was even though obviously Army of Darkness has some good gore in it, I think they played up the comedy
Too much.
even
Oh,
more in Army
They
of Darkness.
absolutely did. They turned it up to 11 on that one.
to the point where it's like, we...
Jakes!
Damn it.
Yeah,
Probably
see,
just-
that's exactly how I felt when you did that.
Can you guys hear those screams in the background?
Um,
There's people outside the
the
windows.
Don't worry about them.
that's the people we keep in the basement.
Yes,
Yeah.
that's our audience.
that's where we
Trying to
get.
leave.
That's where we get the people for our live shows.
Okay, what the fuck was I saying?
I don't
No, so in other
Army
words,
of Darkness,
it's,
not as good.
It's we talked about before about like the over the topness of the gore and the horror side of these movies, and then Evil Dead 2, they kind of ramp up on that, and they ramp up the comedy, because that's what was popular about the first one. And I think the problem is that
Unintentionally, but yes.
with Army of Darkness, they ramped up the comedy, and the horror was just has always seemed to me as like,
It became tertiary.
right, it was an ancillary part of the story.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I agree.
And so that's why I just think it's funny, because like, number one, I think Army of Darkness is just a cool name, and I think the the artwork on the poster is by far better than any of the others.
Yeah.
But it is not. I would actually probably put it third behind the Evil Dead in terms
So,
of enjoyment.
do you know what the original title of the Army of Darkness was?
Is this the Grecian one?
Uruguay?
In America. In America.
No.
The original title was
Was it Evil Dead 3?
no.
Trace.
It was Bruce Campbell versus the Army of Darkness.
Yeah.
In fact, you can still find some I don't know, still, but you can find some DVDs with the title Bruce Campbell versus the Army.
Really?
Now,
Really?
that upset me greatly
I could see.
because it should have been Ash Williams
Absolutely. It would be totally different if it was Ash Williams.
versus the Army of Darkness or something, but basically they trimmed it down to Army of Darkness when
Which
it
was
really
wise.
got this larger distribution. But the smaller distribution was still Bruce Campbell versus the Army of Darkness.
No.
It made no sense. It was the stupidest thing in the fucking world because I didn't understand why Bruce Campbell would be named out against the Army of Darkness
Right.
as opposed to Ash Williams, but
Now,
that's what it
you
was
could
called.
technically, which would be interesting if they did it that way, but you could have Bruce Campbell be because one thing they don't really touch upon a ton, but like you could say Bruce Campbell is a fake name that he decided to have because how was he going to explain what happened to all his friends, right? In Evil Dead 1 and 2, so to speak.
Why would
So-
you say that? Why?
Because now when he's working at like S-Mart and stuff like
Yeah,
that,
yeah,
you
yeah.
know, he's just a regular
but he's
Joe.
working as Ash Williams.
I
at
know, I'm
Best
saying,
Buy.
but that's where they could have maybe had him go by Bruce or something in there, and then his actual name was Ash. It's like what do you call it? Not an AKA, but technically
Pseudonym.
an AKA. Pseudonym, thank you. But yeah, have his pseudonym be Bruce Campbell,
Right.
which would then kind of blend into a regular, you know.
And I think that could make total sense if they'd made any reference to Bruce Campbell as his name.
Correct.
In any of the
They
in the,
don't.
In the previous
Yeah, yeah.
movies.
I think you're both fucked in the head on that one.
Well,
No,
fine.
but
I
but
think
what I'm
that's
we're trying to help them out here.
I'm agreeing with you. I mean, I think it's
it would have been a
all,
bad choice to stick with that.
all
Oh, no, yeah,
all
yeah,
I'm
no.
saying is the reason why it was a bad choice. It would be a bad choice to stick with it is because they make no reference to Bruce Campbell's name
He doesn't have a
in-
name.
in the movies.
Right, in the movie he doesn't, but he was becoming more famous, known for Evil Dead 2. And he was doing other movies as well at that
We
point.
could have said Bruce
TV
Campbell
shows.
Presents. You know,
But
Darkness?
even that.
Yeah.
Bruce Campbell's
They were
name
trying
did
to-
not
That sounds too
need
much
to
like
be
they're trying
on
to
that.
capitalize on it.
It just
Yeah.
anyway.
It's not like it's a porn film.
Anyway,
Yeah.
you right? Yeah. So we'll
Banging
move
skeletons.
past that. But Army of Darkness. Now moving on to that one. Oops, sorry about that. You good? You what? Drink it.
Yeah, no party foul.
You still got all your teeth?
No alcohol abuse.
I do.
You're British, so you didn't start with really nice teeth
Oh,
anyway.
That's true.
Damn.
So,
Feeling the love.
I have great
did you ever
teeth.
notice how there's like the Brits don't
my
have good
teeth.
teeth? You know
Yeah,
what they
and
have?
they don't care.
They have what you call personality teeth, where they're not really pretty, but
they
they
got personality.
they lend the personality of a person, which could be ugly. But anyway,
It's a talking
So-
point.
so okay, so Army of Darkness out of the trilogy, first, second, or third?
Definitely third.
I would probably go third as well.
Okay, and I'm calling it a trilogy, but really it's not a trilogy. We got
know
to
where you're
kind of be
going.
clear about that. But in assuming that you can still call it a trilogy because Part 2 was a remake and a sequel, that you could say the sequel part of it
Made it a sequel.
made it a sequel enough to where you could say Army of Darkness was Part 3. But
Yeah.
you think that was the worst of the three.
Yeah, I mean, primarily for the reasons I said before. It's like, you know, the comedy, even in 2, the comedy isn't why I love that movie.
Yeah, you can explain the
But
comedy
it has
in
a
two,
huge
though.
impact
the
on the
comedy
movie.
in
I
two, I
mean-
feel like, is just he's actually losing his mind, right? That's where kind of a lot of that
Agreed.
I feel like that comedy is coming from, is because
Agreed.
he's like, you know, you got the deer and all that stuff. You know, I mean, that's just somebody losing their mind.
But that's and that is part of the overtopness. I
Correct.
mean, honest to God,
and that's probably why they got away with that too,
well,
right?
this is the movie that got me into those kind of movies that were over the top and ridiculous and just ludicrously stupid yet fun to watch.
See, and I went
It
the
was this
opposite
movie.
way. I went more like I to me, horror should be scary as hell, and the comedy should just be more of a relief of the stress and the suspension
In smaller bites.
Sorry, suspense. Yeah, yes, less. I would say. Now, if your intention is a horror comedy, like Student Bodies, things like that, I'm fine with it because hey, the whole point of it.
That's
But
what
could
you're
you
saying.
go
you
in
get
knowing
with,
that?
with
Did you
Army
know
of
that
Darkness.
going into? Did you know that going into Evil Dead 2?
I did not.
Okay.
So to me, it was more. I was expecting like a revamp and expecting it to be even scarier. And now, but that's the thing is, I think they did a good balance. Like it was, hilarious in parts, but it was a good hilarious in that I felt like it still kind of flowed well. But
Well-
Army of Darkness was more just like. I don't want to say this because it sounds bad because I still like the movie, but it seemed to me more like a money grab.
Yeah, well, and
Evil Dead 2 or
Three,
No,
Evil Dead
Army
3.
of Darkness.
Army of Darkness, sorry.
Yeah, and I 100% agree with that. I mean, and that's kind of what I was saying before. I just think that I didn't think that the comedy was the major aspect of Evil Dead 2. I still think that at the end of the day, it was telling a story, and comedy was in there somewhat to what you're saying as like, a light relief to the gore that was in there.
Okay.
Army of Darkness, literally
Was
from the very first scene.
half and half practically.
Yeah, is really
Yeah.
just a comedy. I mean,
Yeah.
that's really what it is.
Agreed.
With horror thrown in,
Agreed. So like the first one was horror, the second one was horror with comedy, and the third one was comedy with horror.
Right.
But
Exactly.
that sequence embodied Ash Williams into a character that was like that transcended multiple horror genres.
Yeah, and I agree. I mean, and it's funny because we touched on it with one of the audience questions to an extent. I mean, it's the like in the Evil Dead, until the very very end, he's fucking useless.
Sure.
I mean, he
Sure.
really is. It's
And
like,
yet he still survived it. He was still the final girl.
I get it, and we heard an argument of why he survived because he was the final girl. But I mean, I think it's there are so many instances in there where he's just asking stupid questions. There's situations where he needs to stand up and hit.
Are you feeling like this is like he was more based on what she was saying? Do you feel like it's more of kind of like the movie Cube?
The what?
The movie Cube.
As in like Ice Cube?
No, the movie Cube. Please tell me you guys. Have seen that.
Yeah, I hated Q.
But the ending. Who's the only person that survives? The mentally impaired person.
Oh, I see where you're going with this now.
So
Okay.
could that be something similar to what she was kind of going?
So
at?
we should explain this too. So like in our live show, there was somebody who came up with a theory as to why
Part-time
Ash
rocket
survived.
scientist on Instagram, if I remember correctly.
What's that?
I said part-time rocket scientist.
rocket scientist.
There you go.
A little shout out for her.
And
Assuming that's actually her tag.
yeah,
Should
what if
probably
she's
check
wrong?
No, it's
They came up with the idea that Ash was the final girl because he was
he had a learning
a
disability.
learning disability or just slow, let's say.
Right.
Right? So that the demons didn't possess him and stuff. And there's been other movies that have touched on that theme, that the learning impaired or the slower, mentally challenged, whatever you want to call it, were not possessed because of that disability. So the theory is that that's why he survived it, because he was possessed at some point in Evil 2,
Mm-hmm.
where in the beginning he was possessed and then daylight coming he wasn't. His hand got possessed, but he didn't get possessed. So
It seems to make sense though that he didn't get possessed in the first one when everybody else was like instantly possessed. Like I mean,
Well,
one
not
person gets stabbed with a
instantly,
pencil.
not
No,
instantly.
not instantly, but with a pencil, and yet
Yeah, but it
he
took
had
a while,
his
but they
leg
wound
ripped
up, yeah.
into. I mean,
Yeah,
he.
yeah.
All
got
of
his
this
leg
stuff,
carved
he had
into.
blood in his
Sure.
mouth. Obviously, he cut off somebody's head. Which that's
Multiple
that was one
times.
of my gripes though. Was in the audio that they were listening to, the man says if you cut off their head, that's the only way to kill them. But yet every time he cut off somebody's head, they're still talking.
he did say dismember them.
Dismember, but then he
so
also
technically
says,
it's
yeah. But, so to me, it's like, that was one of my gripes. Was hey, come on, he cut her head off. The head should be maybe rolling around.
yeah,
should
but it should be. It's supposed to be more than that. Like the last when he did the sister and took off her arms and her legs and her head.
And they're all going.
Right, that's more of what it was supposed to be like.
Okay.
But you're right. If you take off the head, shouldn't that count?
Yeah.
But It didn't. So, but do you think there's any validation to the learning disability angle? It's a very interesting angle.
Yeah,
Could it be
I'd never heard that
Yeah, I've never heard that, and I think it's a good idea, but I also think that if you think about it, that makes sense because now they are assuming, what's their whole thing? Join us. You know, they want to take over bodies because they think, oh, this is kind of fun, and they feel like he's going to be boring, right? Like they're going to get in him, and then what's going to happen? Okay, well, so maybe they kind of chose him as the last one because he's not worth our time, you know, and so now, hey, we're going to play with the other ones, and then he ends up destroying them, in essence, right, by throwing the book in the fire. And so
right.
maybe that's the thing, is that's his one smart thing is, oh, shit, well, fire seems to hurt them, you know.
So there's no doubt, I think, that even if you ask Bruce Campbell, Ash Williams is not the smartest tool in the shed.
Right.
He's not the sharpest guy, right?
That's a nice reference.
Thank you. Thank you, Mary. But the point is that they played upon that, right? Evil Dead 2, Army of Darkness. He's not smart. And it's not, his heart's in the right place, but it's not always.
Does he not become smarter with the Deadite stuff, right? He seems to
because he's been the one fighting them for so long.
Correct. So now he's got learning disability, but we're not saying he's fully handicapped in that sense, right? So
clearly he's not
still
fully
able to
handicapped.
pick up on, oh, hey, you know, if you say this,
right.
you're not gonna, you know, and he might accidentally say stuff or still do stupid things. But
Yeah. I think that's the whole thing. Is he's not like openly stupid. He just hidden stupid.
Stupid on the inside.
Yeah, because he's good looking and he says the right things and he's got a girlfriend. He speaks. He's a well-spoken person. He was still the final girl, but on the inside he's kind of stupid, right? So that's why the rest of it became more of like him being like not knowing the name.
So, so you're saying he's like British Teeth? He's personality? Or
Ooh, fucked up on the outside.
Yeah.
Friendly on the inside.
I have great
you might
teeth.
have something.
I have great teeth.
Oh, I thought you said I agree.
No,
You said you have great teeth?
I have great teeth.
Well, that's clearly because you've been in the United States
you've been in
for
the
a
United
long
States
time.
long enough.
Yeah.
But like, so the thing we've talked about, so you have him as like slow, little bits ineffective until the very, very end, and then as you get into 2, which obviously takes that story and then extends it, that's where, I think it's the realization that these things are real, because I think they do a good job of it in the TV show, of like, saying not everyone believes that the Deadites are real, and that there's this
In the TV show, they try to because the Deadites no longer in the cabin; they're all over
right.
the place.
And obviously
Which
that's
it
what
should
makes
be,
the story,
actually.
because he's like going from one place to another.
Agreed.
But I think it's and that's what ultimately, that realization that these things are real, and he's the only one that can stop it, or he believes he's the only one that stop it. I think that's what then turns him crazy, right? It's the.
Well, turning him crazy is a little different than him being stupid, though.
Yeah, it wasn't necessarily like. I wasn't necessarily totally linking one with the other, but obviously, I am trying to say that there's a line between the two. In other words, I think it's really just the realization that these things really are real, which just took him a lot longer to realize in The Evil Dead than like most everyone else.
Okay, so let me throw this at you then. Because comedy, wow, it's getting to be a party outside, isn't it? Can you? I don't know if you people can hear that or not, but it's getting annoying to us up here. We don't have a studio, people. This is just where we record.
Yes.
There's a party outside, lots of bars around. Anyway, so if comedy was the direction they took, that maybe took some people out of it, such as Evil Dead 2, and then extending it into Army of Darkness, the remake in 2013, where it was an actual serious horror movie, and again, they went then back to the TV show where it was a comedy horror, and then they took it back, and this is still all Sam Raimi and Bruce Campbell.
Right.
Then brought it back to a series with Evil Dead Rise, which is planned to be a trilogy of the utmost seriousness ever. What do you think is better?
I think they're just still experimenting, right? I mean,
I don't know about that.
When they brought it back, it was more of like, well, you know what? Maybe now we can get away with 50,000 gallons or whatever you said of blood. That's what maybe that's what they originally wanted, but they could only afford 300. So maybe that was their test. And then I honestly did not like the remake of Evil Dead.
Which one? 2013?
2013. Yeah.
Oh my God!
It did not butter my bread, if you want to say that.
I don't think anyone wants to say that.
I don't want to say that
butter your
either.
biscuits.
I thought the remake was fan-fucking-tastic.
Really? Okay, I may need to rewatch it. It's been 10 years since I've seen it.
It was good. I think it's funny because I think part of oh my God, it's so loud.
I hope you guys can't hear that. I really do hope you.
Part of what I'm going to say is actually kind of goes against, quite frankly, what we've all been saying, which is, I think maybe it's one of the things where Raimi looks back at what they were trying to do for the first one, and say, we were trying to create a serious horror movie, like that is what we were trying to do. The comedic elements that were in there, and we talked about it. I certainly talked about it in the podcast, the last episode. Is those comedic elements were really out of not having budgets, so things became funny because of inexperience of the filmmakers, and the need to do things in a certain way because of budget.
Okay.
Maybe the 2013 one was sorry, step back. So Evil Dead 2 became, what I'm being given money for is to create a new movie that is going to make us all money. And the way I know I can make us money is by saying, let's take all of the things that were really popular about the first one and extend it.
Sure. Yep.
And so that's where 2 came from. I think Army of Darkness just extends that more. I think the remake is really him going back to trying to create the movie that he thought he was really going for in the original.
I think that's part of it. And just to clarify, that he produced that movie, but he did not direct it, and he did not write it. Sam Raimi did not write the remake in 2013. Nor did he really write this Evil Dead Rise with the rest of them, the rest of the sequel that's allegedly planned.
Or something?
He's an executive producer, and he is a consultant on this whole story.
Sure.
So it is with his blessing that these are being done, but they are really not his original ideas. But what it is it's fans, literally the directors of these, the sequel in 2013 and Evil Dead Rise, who's going to, I believe, direct the next two. Sam Raimi and Bruce Campbell did seek him out to direct this idea, but he wrote it too. I mean, I don't know if the director who did Evil Dead Rise also wrote it, but the Evil Dead 2013 remake, the director also wrote it. He probably wrote it with the consent of Raimi, or at least Raimi checked it out and said, yeah, this is okay, go ahead with it. But the point is, they let somebody take that idea further. So I don't think it was them saying, this is the idea I really had for it to be.
Okay.
I think it was more or less, the fans know this genre. They know this franchise. And here's a director who has a great idea to take it in this direction, which literally was a remake because it was in the same cabin, a similar cabin, not the exact same cabin. Similar cabin, the concept was the same. In this cabin, friends in the cabin, and all this stuff happens. But he took it to such a dark place, it was like, wow, that's great, go with it, run with it. And then Evil Dead Rise has so many things in it that harken back and are homages to the original. The fly sound at the beginning and the end of the movie.
When she has the chainsaw.
The chainsaw. And by the way, did you notice the color of the chainsaw was not red in Evil Dead Rise? You know what the color of the chainsaw was?
Yellow.
The same color of Ash's car. It was literally the same color as Ash's car. Because Ash's car wasn't in there.
Right.
And Ash's car was in every other sequel.
Yep.
Or every other movie in this franchise. So that was the way they kind of worked that in.
I like it.
I have another little trivia for you on that, if
Okay.
you're interested. in Evil Dead Rise, when they're listening to the record of the priest talking about the Book of the Dead, and there's crowds arguing in there, and not crowds, but there's a group of men saying, "Oh, don't do it."
Yeah.
The one who says, "It's the Book of the Dead, you might as well burn it," was Bruce Campbell.
Oh, really?
Because that's what he did in the first
Yeah.
movie.
There you go.
One we just watched, he burned the Book of the Dead. And that's how he fixed it. So they had him say that line. That was his only cameo in the movie, but he had to have a cameo just so they could say that Bruce Campbell was in every Evil Dead movie. He had a cameo in the remake in 2013 too, but it wasn't on camera. It was just the end credits.
Right.
Did you see that one? Okay. But still, ultimately, I loved the Evil Dead 1. I loved Evil Dead 2 more. I loved Army of Darkness a little less. The remake, I bought way into. It was such a phenomenal standalone movie. Even if you didn't consider it part of the franchise, it was a great, horrific, awesome kills movie. Great
the
scenes.
kills. The kills were good.
It was fantastic. And then, the Evil Dead TV show, I watched all 3 seasons. It was fantastic because it harkened back to the first 2 movies, 3 technically. And then Evil Dead Rise, I honestly think it was in my top 5 movies ever. It was that, to me, Evil Dead Rise was that good of a movie.
Okay.
It was phenomenal, and I think, not that they tend to give Oscars for horror movies, but like
They had The Thing. Didn't The Thing get Oscars?
actually, I think The Shining did.
Shining did too. Sure.
Yeah, so you're right. Maybe they do, but no.
But it's rare.
It's
rare.
I can't remember what the character's name is. The mother that got possessed
In Evil Dead Rise.
in Evil Dead
Yes.
Rise.
Okay.
Like, I thought she was just phenomenal.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Like, she was just so amazing in that
Absolutely.
role. Like, every single part, like her mannerisms, her face, her facial
Totally agree.
expressions. It's like, I thought she was just phenomenal. Have you seen it?
I have not seen the movie.
Okay. Well, you
Logan!
Hey.
you can be in your own club.
Yes.
You haven't seen Evil Dead Rise yet.
Not.
I
That's why
thought
I've
you
been
did
rather
see
quiet.
I thought you did
No,
see it
no.
this past weekend.
All that I played.
Oh
a good
my
part.
God!
No, I wanted to, and family
Well, we're-
parties and whatnot. So I was
We
not-
won't spoil. We didn't spoil anything yet, really.
No, I'm still interested to see it either way.
Yeah.
It's definitely on my list. So
Yeah,
So,
it's-
do you
it's
consider
awesome.
yourself an Evil Dead
the
fan?
Deadite. No.
Yes, the
Uh,
Deadite. Sure.
Yes, for sure. I do still like. That's the thing. It's.
I mean,
just
a
like you
fanatic
it's-
fan. A
Not
fanatic.
as fanatical about it, but it's more. I will watch them when they're on. I'm not gonna memorize every single line and things like that. But it is quotable. I feel like it is. The franchise in general is just good, and it's a good. I honestly feel like it could be considered a good gateway into horror if somebody says I
Totally
can't
agree.
watch horror movies.
Totally agree. But then they should start with Evil Dead 2, not Evil Dead 1.
Correct. Evil
Right.
Dead 2, and then then at least hey wait, it's a comedy. Oh, okay, it's not too bad. It's still kind of gory, but I think that should bring
Right.
people in. So yeah, I do like the franchise. So that's definitely something that's made me it's made me
Because
laugh,
it takes
you
the
know.
franchise in a different direction. It takes into the serious horror movie realm.
Sure.
Well, and I think the other thing for me is I became, and maybe this is an obvious statement, I guess, but like I became a Bruce Campbell fan, and I watch like pretty much everything that he's in,
Right.
based purely, even Bubba Hotep.
Even Bubba. I like Bubba Hotep.
It was okay.
One of the best of his movies, but I like Bubba Hotep.
But it's like based purely on, well, again,
Because it was Bruce Campbell.
Evil Dead 2.
I get you. I
Evil Dead
get
2
you.
is really that was my gateway. Evil Dead. I'm sure
Yeah.
I'm sure I saw the Evil Dead before I saw
Oh, see, I
Evil Dead
didn't.
2.
I saw Evil Dead 2 before I saw Evil Dead, The Evil Dead.
See, I saw
But-
Evil Dead first, and then
Did
saw
you?
Evil Dead
Before
2.
2?
Yeah, and that's what made me. Because I liked Evil Dead 1 initially more than I did Evil Dead 2, but then I found myself going back more to Evil Dead 2. And I don't know if that was more I
Yeah.
didn't want to taint the first one, pun intended.
He said
I said
taint.
Taint.
Yeah, he said
but
taint.
it just that to me was like, okay, like we mentioned before, it kind of diverted. The second one diverted more into the the comedy realm.
Sure. Sure.
But like I said, understandably, because he's starting to lose his mind a little bit. They couldn't technically.
Yeah,
do
yeah.
some
I
of
mean,
that
that
stuff.
definitely has something to do with it, I think. But
yeah.
But ultimately, I think that most people seem to have started with Evil Dead 2 and then saw Evil Dead 1 and said, well, wait a minute, isn't that the same thing as Evil Dead 2? And then,
Right.
the confusion started and stuff. Army of Darkness was a comedy. But now you've got a generation of people that are seeing Evil Dead, the remake from 2013. And now you've got 10 years later, everybody's watching Evil Dead Rise. Because they know the series, they're going to watch it, and they're like being flipped out of their gourd because of how scary and deadpan serious it is.
But I mean, obviously, we no longer have the audience in front of us, so I don't know why I'm pointing out there.
I can run out there and clap.
But I mean, I think it'd be interesting to like get the reaction for someone that's the 2013 was the first movie they saw.
Right.
Who then went back and either watched the originals or, I think in reality, probably more likely, then saw the Evil Dead TV show and go, oh my God, it's an Evil Dead TV show. I'm going to watch this.
Which is really an extension of Evil Dead 2.
Well, and that's exactly what I mean. So in other words, it's like you do go from if the 2013 Evil Dead was your first Evil Dead, you then watch the TV show and you're going, why is this funny? It's in other words, it's like because you
right.
don't know that. No, that's how it's started out.
Right.
I mean, no.
Right,
And props to everybody that's involved in it, because, man, if you tried to do that with any other franchise, would you be able to get away with it like?
Well, you have Scream.
The Evil Dead has?
Well, no, but I think the whole thing of the fact that they're doing Three Stooges comedy with awesome kills and horror, that's something that I don't think that's a Scream thing. Scream is more like higher brow comedy, right? It's a little bit funny, but it's not slapstick like Three Stooges.
It got slapstick, I felt like.
You think?
Just
I think yeah.
Probably the same thing unintentionally, right? I don't think they felt like they had to throw comedy in there, and they tried to do comedy of the time frame, and it's still they were still trying to be serious with throwing that comedy in there, and I don't think they achieved that with the later
Okay,
ones.
I can see some of that.
I mean, I agree to an extent that I don't think so much slapstick, and I think certainly to what we've all said, like certainly Army of Darkness is slapstick comedy.
Right.
Evil Dead 2 has some element of that, but it's more comedy. Again, we're repeating ourselves, like comedy horror.
Yeah.
I think the Scream franchise, we talked about it before. I mean, it does. I think the Scream, what it does well is that perfect melding of comedy, making fun of itself, making fun of the genre.
Right, but to me that's different than the slapstick Three Stooges comedy that we're getting out of clearly the mostly being Army of Darkness.
Yeah.
That was a Three Stooges. The whole thing with the whole mini-me where the glass shattered and he became like a whole bunch of mini ashes running around. That whole thing was a Three Stooges movie, and it lasted at least 20 minutes. And after a while of that, you're like, look, I'm a big Three Stooges fan, so I got into it and I sat and watched the whole thing. But I could see where people would look at that and go, all right, when's the movie getting back to the horror movie story?
See, I was way more of a Marx Brothers fan
Than Three Stooges?
Yeah.
Wow. I love Marx Brothers too. But
And I don't know whether that's...
you realize nobody knows who Marx Brothers is now. None of this younger audience knows who Marx Brothers is.
Are you pointing at the invisible audience?
In the YouTube world.
Little box.
That little box. That little thing called an iPhone computer.
Anyway, we're
way
over an hour again.
All right. Any final words, Logan?
No final words other than I like Evil Dead.
And I cannot lie.
And you other brothers can't deny. No, don't drink Red Saw.
Okay. Mr. Price.
Definitely watch the Evil Dead franchise. I think you will not be disappointed from watching from start to end. And I 100% agree. Evil Dead Rises. I don't know in a million years that I'd put it in my top 5. but it's definitely
Which one wouldn't you put in your top
Evil
5?
Dead Rise.
Evil Dead Rise.
Really?
No, I would definitely say it's
Top
my
10?
it's my favorite movie of the year, hands down.
Okay, all right. But not your top 5, not top 10?
Are we saying horror movies or are we saying?
Well, what else would we be saying? Comedy? It's not a comedy at all.
No, you just said it's your top 5 movies.
Top 5 horror movies.
Okay.
Come on.
say it that
This is a horror podcast.
I could argue.
Okay, come on. Just fucking answer.
It would be one of these things where, like, I probably have about 50 movies that are in my top 10 movies overall.
I get you. Me too. I'm with you. I'm with you.
I could say it's in my top 10 horror movies.
Okay.
It was excellent. It was excellent.
That's enough for me to go watch it.
Are any of the and just so you know, to me, Evil Dead Rise is in my top 5.
Wow.
Yeah, I don't,
Of which there's probably 8 or 10 movies.
Yeah,
I
don't know
get
that
you,
I'd go that far,
but
although, like, I don't know that I've necessarily put that much enough thought about it because it is a very close to a perfect horror movie.
totally agree.
You know, it really
It is very
it
close
re-
to a perfect horror
It
movie.
really has everything.
It's scary. It's intense.
Oh,
It's moody.
very suspenseful.
The sound. If you got to see it in the theater, you got to see this in the theater.
And it really is. And it really is one of these movies where, like, you care about the characters.
Sure.
Like,
sure.
like when
Absolutely.
when
Every
so-
single one of them.
When someone dies, it's like
Except
like,
maybe the son, the boy that was
It
the
hurts.
DJ. I didn't care
Yeah.
about him too
It
much.
hurts.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, no,
Yeah.
and also, and this sounds really bad, but also, like, the ancillary characters of the neighbors.
Yeah, no, they're cool to die. That's cool with me.
That
Yeah,
was-
no,
that was
I
fun.
wanted to kill all of them.
But yeah, it was just
And the thing is, it has all the, it harkens back to the original Evil Dead series, the franchise. It has all those little things in it that you're like, oh, they're saying the Dead by Dawn thing, or oh, the Fly, or all that. You know, you're like, all these different things that happen. You're like, you catch on to them, and they do it on purpose. There's a couple, not to spoil it for you. There's a couple little Ash phrases that they throw in there. You're like, oh, I remember Ash said that, and this. Those things make it one of those fan favorites because it makes it like it's the original, but it's also
But
a
it's
damn
dead
good
serious.
standalone
And
on
it's
its
dead
own.
serious.
It
Yeah.
can, and it's
Okay.
dead serious. There is
Pun intended,
no
dead
comedy.
serious.
There is
I mean,
no
and-
comedy in this.
And also, it's like I love movies that no one's safe.
Okay.
You know, it's because the people that ultimately end up being saved at the end, I wouldn't necessarily have called that out early on.
Okay.
And they did a really good thing.
So I've got homework, is what you're telling me.
Yes.
They did a really good thing with the way they open the movie and the way they close the movie.
Yes.
I'm trying not to give anything away to Logan.
La, 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 la.
That's artistry.
Okay.
Well,
The way they open the show, the way they open the film and close the film, and everything was full circle, and you get it, and you're like, "Fuck me."
Well, and because it makes you think, because again, without necessarily giving anything away, there's stuff that happens at the beginning, and then all of a sudden, it switches to something else, and you go, "Hold on a sec, what we just?"
Yeah, don't give it away. Don't give it away.
over here.
Don't give it away.
Give it away, give it away, give it away.
Don't
yeah.
give it away now.
But yes, it comes full circle, and they just do a really,
Okay.
really good
But you've
job.
sold me. I'll still see, I'll see it.
Were you not planning to watch that?
I was. This
I
was
mean-
one of those movies where, and this is going to sound stupid, but what I hate is when I saw the trailer, the first thing I thought of was, ooh, this is going to be good. And then I was hearing good things about it. And then I like for that stuff to kind of die down before I go and see it, because then I get it too hyped up in my head. And then
I
go into
get it.
And
I
so
get it.
I usually don't see it. If I don't see
I get it.
like the Thursday
I get
night
it.
showing, midnight
Yep.
showing,
Yep.
before the hype happens,
Yep.
then I usually wait a week or two and then I'll see it. And then, decide for myself. So
I totally get it, because otherwise you go in with these high hopes and wow, this is going to be phenomenal.
And
And
I've
you're
been
like,
let down by
all
a
right, it was
lot of
okay.
horror movies.
Right, I
I
totally get it.
guy.
I totally get it. We actually went into this with, well, I did, went into this with high hopes because I had heard all the same jargon too, and I thought, okay, I'm hearing a lot of good things.
And this was, people saying, possibly the same people saying Skinamarink is one of the scariest.
I get it.
So that's
I
what
get
I get
it.
nervous about.
I get it. So I went into this thinking to myself the same thing. Like, I heard so many good things about this movie. It's going to be phenomenal. And I thought, when I got in the theater, I'm like, it's probably going to suck. I'm expecting this movie to suck because it got too much hype.
Right.
But I really want it to do well.
Yeah.
But I expect it to suck because it got so much hype. And then it fucking blew me away.
Okay.
Yeah, it's.
So
it's
don't
incredible.
go into the theater thinking the hype is too much.
I'm sold.
And the best part about the movie is I cannot wait until we do a live.
Oh,
either a
we
live
gotta
review
do a show. We gotta do a show.
or at least a podcast because there are.
Yes.
Yes. I'm watching that movie and I'm like, oh my god, Logan's going to have that on a trivia question.
Yep.
I need to have that one on a
Yep.
trivia
Yep.
question.
Because there's so many things that harken back to
Yeah.
the original not trilogy. I should specify the original franchise, and then there's a whole bunch of other stuff in there they put in there. So,
Turning into Stewie. Getting
So-
my pitch voice.
Mr. Lynch, you need to go watch this movie, and
I
then
will.
we're gonna do it. We're gonna do an episode
All right,
on
I
it.
will. I'm all
Yes.
for it.
In fact, you know what we should do? Maybe an episode, and you tell us if this is a good idea or a bad idea. An episode of the newest remake, which is going to be a trilogy, but let's just call it for one now, which is the Evil Dead Rise, compared to Evil Dead the remake in 2013,
Could do that.
because those are the two serious takes on the Evil Dead trilogy. I keep calling it a trilogy, franchise.
It's late.
Yes.
Sorry.
All right. Yeah, we should end it.
Woo!
All right, folks.
Anyway.
Thank you, everybody, for sticking with us. This was probably one of our longest series of episodes.
Yeah.
But it's chock full of a lot of everything, trivia,
12,
everything. Yeah. But thank you,
you
everybody, for
shaking?
listening, and like,
Because it's
subscribe,
on
pass it on to your
sleep.
friends, get your butts onto the YouTube and watch us. And
Comment down below. We want to hear more from you people than we've been hearing in the
Yes.
past. We want to. We get messages on Facebook and some other venues. We want to hear on YouTube and all the other venues.
And I'm not
What
trying to
do
be
you
rude,
think?
but I don't care that you're from India.
that's a good one.
I
like
don't.
that. All right.
You know who you are.
Yeah.
Well, now we got
That
one
tickled my
less
funny bone on
fan.
that one. Yeah.
Now we have
I
one
don't-
less
I
fan.
don't think they subscribe.
I don't even think it was a subscriber. So, all right, folks. Thank
anyway.
you again.
Love you. Bye. Do we have to do the pausing or wait for you to
Yeah,
clap?
you got to do the pause.
Okay, sorry.
The pause and then the clap. The clap is what I finished the thing on. So we got to let the right in front of your face. Thankfully, is all the social media.
Looks like
We
I
give it a
just
pause so we can show, and then we do this, and we go like this, and now we're
She
done.
Just blew the microphones out.
That's all right.
All right.
All right. Bye.
Bye-bye. Yay.